Thanks for having me. My name is Marvin Woodward. I do work for the state, and I am here to help. We are in the process of building a new judicial center that will be named after former Governor Nathan Deal. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about our process. And I am going to make some recommendations to you.
Well,
and based on some of the experiences that we've had with this project. The location is where the old archives building was, if you're familiar with that, in Atlanta, near the state capitol, between the state capitol and Old Turner Stadium. It's on the site of the former archives building. It looked like a cube, if you remember that building. It's about a 6-acre site. The red dot represents where that location was or is. We're going to have some underground parking and some surface parking behind the building, but the challenge is it's right next to the two major interstates. So that was the old archives building. This is the first opportunity in my career that I had a chance to blow up a building. So we blew it up early one Sunday morning when traffic was light. Fortunately, everything went okay. The last little piece of fire there is just to show that all the detonation took place. It's more for effect than anything else, but it did make for good effect. This may be the most important slide that I show you. We utilize 3 different project delivery methods, and I'll start at the bottom. The one on the bottom is called design, bid, build. It's what most of this country was built with. You hire a design team, they develop a full set of plans and specs. You put those plans and specs out to bid. You receive a bid from the contractor. The low bid gets the project as long as they're qualified. The middle delivery method is construction manager at risk. That's what we're using on our current judicial project, and that's the recommendation I would make to you. And so during that process, you hire a design team, and then literally right after that you hire a construction team. And you hire them both of them based on their qualifications. So you don't hire them based on price, or at least that would be my recommendation. You negotiate a price with them. But the advantage of that is that the construction team is involved in the design process. So they're going to comment on materials. They're going to comment on maybe some opportunities to save money. And so it's a very collaborative process, but you do have 2 separate contracts, one with the design team, one with a construction team. And then the construction team is going to give you estimates on your construction costs along the way as the project plans develop. So that way you know you're in budget. So if they come back with a cost that's too high, then you go back to the drawing board and you maybe have to remove some scope for the project. The top one is design build, and that's where you would have one contract and you would hire the design team and the construction team under that one contract. That is the fastest way to deliver a project, but realize that you only have one contract. So you at that point, you're not going to have a contract with the design team. It's going to be the combined team, and I think as an owner, you lose a little bit of control with that. But the advantage of design build and then see them at risk is you can actually start construction before the plans are fully developed. So that's why it's faster than the traditional design bid build method. So this was our timeline. Something else that I want to emphasize is we broke our design process up into 2 separate phases. So initially we hired a design team along with a judicial planning firm that just focuses on court planning. And I can't emphasize enough how valuable that is, and I would, again, encourage you to do that. You could make that one contract, so you hire a designer as part of that. They hire a judicial planning team, and you take that all the way through design. We broke that up into two parts because we didn't have the money for the project yet. So we wanted to present to the governor and the General Assembly, hey, what this project's going to cost. But the judicial planning team really looked out 50 years as to how this court building would function, what are the needs currently, but what are the needs going to be over the next 25 or 50 years. And that proved to be very valuable. Our project also got put on hold due to politics during the middle of the process because the Governor Deal wanted to add 2 more Supreme Court justices, and the Supreme Court didn't want any more, so we went on hold for a while until they worked that out. But the project is about 75% complete. We hope to be done by the end of the year. Our design and construction team included Justice Planning Associates, so that's the firm that I was talking about that proved to be valuable. They're based out of Columbia, South Carolina. And then our design team was a joint venture between Robert Stearns, which actually is in New York City, and then Stevens and Wilkinson's a local design firm in Atlanta. So Stearns did the conceptual work, and as the design progressed, then Stevens and Wilkinson kind of took over and finished up the design, and then we had a landscape architect firm as well. And then our construction team was Gilbane Building Company. They are based out of Providence, Rhode Island, but they've had an office in Atlanta for over 20 years. Our all-in budget right now is just shy of $132 million, so a pretty significant project. So that includes design work, demolition, construction, furniture, and all the inspections that go with that. That equates to about $590 a square foot for a building, which is a little bit on the high side, but it is a court building that is going to last probably 75, 100 years, and could argue is the second most important building in the state of Georgia. So that's one of the concepts that we looked at. It's the one that we finally decided to stick with. Once we said, hey, that's the building look we kind of want, we wanted to make sure that the stacking worked. So that's where this facility court planning team can come in, as they can really help you get your building organized, how it's going to function, how it's going to flow, and make sure it fits on your site and fits within your project design. I'm just going to kind of speed up the pace here. We also used physical models of buildings to make sure we were happy with the design. I went out on my screen. You guys still see that?
Yes.
All right.
Touch it.
Touch the screen? All right, thank you. We also did a physical mock-up of one of the courtrooms in the Georgia World Congress Center during a time where they weren't busy. So that proved to be very valuable too, because the judges got to sit at the bench, and we made some changes to heights and distances based on that project and that process. We also used some virtual models and animation that I'm going to talk about a little more in a few minutes. So again, that's our final concept and design. So if you drive through Atlanta, you'll start to see, you will see that building, and it's starting to take shape. We have 7 levels, so I'm not going to go through every level of the building for you. Our main entrance will be on the first floor with secured entrance for our visitors. Our judges have separate entrances that are secured that only they can access with badges. So we put a lot of thought into security, both from entering the building and also from a blast perspective. Some van parking near the site. The appellate court is the blue area. It's on the 3rd floor. And then the Supreme Court is located up at the top on the 6th on the 6th floor. A process that we use that, again, I would highly recommend is called 3D or building information modeling. The design, I would make sure your design professional has the capabilities of doing that. The advantage is you can identify clash detections in the design during that process. And they can also do some animation, like some key spaces or some virtual reality, so that you can experience the building before it gets built. So I want to show you an example of that. So this is our atrium. So the atrium is nowhere close to being completed like this, but you can see through this animation, you can get a good feel for what the atrium and what the interior of that building is going to look like. This is the appellate courtroom. So again, the judges saw this, they got to make comments on it, and we've made adjustments because of this process and doing a physical mock-up. Here's the Supreme Court room. So I think you can see how valuable having this capability is, because with all this millwork, you don't want to make a mistake. You want to get it right the first time. You don't want to have any change orders or rework. And then this is a typical judge's chamber. Probably had more discussion about the judge's chambers than we did the courtroom.
Sure.
Nobody's surprised by that. No. So just some, notes of interest. 224,000 square feet, 7 floors. Atrium will be 112 feet high. So I went through that really fast, but I'd rather, I guess in summary, and I'd be glad to take some questions. Again, I want to emphasize that you hire a judicial facility planning firm that's part of the design team. You could do that separate, or you can do that all under one contract with your design. And I would also recommend that you use the CM at risk delivery process, because it's the most collaborative, and it also gives you feedback along the way that you're on budget. And that is so critical, because the traditional design bid build method, you don't know you're on budget until the day you open bids. Designer will give you estimates, but you really don't know. So under the CM at risk process, we give the team a budget, and they can't exceed it. So you don't go over budget. And then the last thing is I would encourage you to use the building information modeling, the 3D design and animation process, so you can experience the building before it's built. So I'll pause now and be glad to take any questions.
Councilor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. Could you talk about 3 things? Courtrooms, how many courtrooms, how many judges, and then security and parking?
Okay. We only have 2 courtrooms, Supreme Court and Appellate Court. The Supreme Court is now comprised of 9 judges. It was previously 7. That's why we had to pause for a while. The Appellate Court, they hear cases in groups of 3 judges, but there's only 1 case at a time, so there was only need for 1 courtroom. But there's 15 Appellate Court judges right now. That court increases as the population of Georgia increases. So we just had a recent increase of 3 judges, so we had to accommodate them during this process. Also, as part of our building, we have built future shell space, so space that we're not going to build out right now, but it's available as that court expands. What was your last question?
Parking and security.
Okay, we've got about 40 spaces under the building for the judges, so they'll have secure access that only they can get into, separate elevators that only they have access to, and we have about 185 spaces, surface parking for clerks and staff around the back of the building, secured fence. The front of the building will have your typical security where you're going to have to go, through a detector, empty your pockets and purses out and that sort of thing. Answer your question?
Yes, you did. I'm assuming the security manpower is state employees?
It'll be state patrol will actually man that building for us.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions?
Did you answer this question about, you did parking, and you said, you mentioned elevators.
Yeah, we have 40 spaces underneath the
How many
building.
elevators you have?
I don't know that off the top. I know we've got 2 separate bays. I'm going to guess 4.
Okay,
I should know that, but I don't. I think 4.
okay.
One of those will be dedicated only for the judges. Nobody else will have access, or you'll have to badge. You have to badge
Sure.
in to get to that
Yeah.
elevator.
So, Mr. Mayor, we need to take advantage of this opportunity. We talked to him on a conference call, and because of his background with the state and what he's doing with the Supreme Appellate Court, we just knew that we had to bring them here and that you hear them, and I'm sure the chief judge and other judges will watch this component because they want to see what's going on with this Supreme Appellate Court, because they are obviously looking for a new courthouse. And but where we are, I think, I've got the deputy city manager coming shortly with a timeline for addressing some of the things we need to be talking about, whether we're going to go for a special purpose local option sales tax, and we don't know at this point whether there's going to be construction of a new facility. But we wanted to talk about process. We were so impressed with the obviously the CM at risk process that I'd like to talk to you at the next meeting about adopting a process in the event you pull the trigger on moving forward with SPLOST and with constructing a new administrative building or new courthouse. At least we have a process in mind that we can start fine-tuning and putting together. And then at the next meeting, we would want to talk to you about the 4 options that we presented to you and to the public, and we want to see if we can narrow those options down and get some direction from you in terms of option. And if we can get a process down, and let's say that CM at risk, which is what we are going to propose or recommend to you at the next meeting, and then we want to discuss options, and hopefully we can get down to an option or options that you can agree that we will pursue, and then from there we will await your direction as far as moving forward with a special purpose local option sales tax, and if successful, how all of that will work. So we will be coming back to you at the very next meeting, the 4th Tuesday.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would also recommend, if you don't have staff that's managed the CM at risk process before, you probably need to reach out and hire supplemental staff to help you do that, because it would be beneficial. It will save you money in the long run.
Yeah.
Councilor Thomas had a question.
That was one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, Mr. Woodward. We've talked just very briefly about having a project manager that is answerable to the city, and it may be a contract employee, not necessarily a new position. And can you expand on that just a bit? Did you have such a position, or what? Do you typically not do that, or?
The agency that I work for, we are that. So we're the state's in-house owner representative. So we currently manage 35 construction projects. And so we serve in that capacity, so we do not have to outsource that. But but we do a lot of these every year, so we're skilled at it. But I highly recommend you either hire a firm or a contract individual that would be your owner's representative and that would serve you and make the best decisions for the city of Columbus.
We have some people on our staff who are very capable and of doing this kind of thing, but they currently have a full-time job.
Right.
Some of them more than a full-time job. And to add a daily presence, if you will, at the construction site when we are doing this multi-million-dollar project, whatever it turns out to be, I think is a very important thing for us to consider.
It is a full-time job for somebody to manage the process.
Thank you. And in the building that you have there, you said you have 2 courtrooms. I'm assuming the rest of that is administrative support personnel and that kind of
It's
stuff?
all administrative support. And one thing we did not have to wrestle with or, would be, prisoners on trial, because that's not the cases they hear. So that's a whole nother factor that plays into what you would have to do, and that's why the firm that does court planning will help you think that through and corridors and how people enter and exit and things like. So that's another level of complexity that we don't have that you will have to wrestle with.
And as I recall, the first date that you put up there when you started doing this was in 2010.
Yeah, we've been on a
And we're now in 19, and you're expecting a December 2019.
We've been on a 9-year journey. A good part of that was just establishing our budget. What's the space? What site do we want to put it on? Are we confident in our estimate? Have we accounted for inflation? And don't forget that. Make sure they're not giving you current dollars, but the dollars in which the year which you build it. So, and then we had to go, present that to the governor and General Assembly, and it took a couple of years for them to decide that they wanted to fund a building, for that amount of money.
I hope we don't take 9 years.
Hopefully don't either.
And
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Woodward.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, our construction time has been 25 months, so once we started, it's gone well.
Yeah.
It just took us a while to get everything aligned.
And your presence here today and kind of walking us through what the state has done and the process y'all use actually will help shorten our time, because one of the things we've wrestled with and had a lot of discussion about is how the process should flow, how we ought to try to, who we get involved, when we get them involved, and just trying to get that framework
Right.
settled upon has been a challenge. So with that, having confidence in the fact that the state of Georgia uses this model and does it time and time again successfully, I think just having that kind of confidence for the council, for the public, I think that's going to help us get this thing moving a little quicker.
Well, we've used this same model to build buildings at Columbus Tech and Columbus State University, so it's nothing new, but you do need somebody skilled in managing the process. And I'm here as a resource. If you guys want to come up and talk some more, if you want to tour the building, do a deeper dive into the process, I'm available and would be glad to help you.
We're grateful. We may take you up on that. Councilor Thomas, you had another comment?
Mr. City Manager, you were saying that in the next coming meeting, several things will happen. Am I correct? We have a work session this month, right? We have five Tuesdays, and do we have a work session?
Yes, we.
July 30th, yes.
And maybe at that work session, some of the kinds of things that you were talking about, if they're available, I'm ready for us to make some decisions and move. So if we can do some of that perhaps at the work sessions, have some of the discussions that council needs to have, I think it would be helpful.
So are you willing, I'd like to bring back at least to go ahead and approve the process, the CM at risk at the next meeting, if you're okay, if you're comfortable with
I
that.
think we bring it back, and then if there are any issues that surface that we need to investigate further, we take that time to do that. But I think we started, I mean, we've got a pretty good template. It's got a good track record.
Yes.
So I think it's something that we can bring up and talk about and make sure everybody gets
Sure.
comfortable.
Yeah, I just don't want us to lose that work session opportunity if we need to do some kinds of
Yes.
things
Yeah,
at
and
that
you know,
time.
it would be interesting that even if we have a recommendation for maybe the two options to whittle it down to, if we can get that done before the work session, because I think the value of the work session is council has an opportunity to kind of chew on it a little bit. And then when we meet at the work session, then councilors can formulate their concerns, their questions, and it may help us move a little quicker towards
Yes.
our ultimate destination.
And of course, as much information as you can get to us beforehand,
Sure.
so we can take a look at it and read it and go through it would be helpful too,
Yes.
I think.
I think that starts by making an early recommendation and then gathering that information so that we know what you need so that we can get it to you by the 30th.
Well, I can tell you when we were kind of directed to Mr. Woodward and had the conference call, I mean, it's a resource that, really, you've been a resource that we can't pay for. So, you know, I really want to thank you for
You're welcome.
your time and coming down to share with us. And then I think I heard you open the door to say that we can call on you and.
You have my number.
Well.
And I want to tell, I've been in this role for 10 years, and we've probably done $4 billion worth of construction. We have not gone to court once on the CM at risk process, because it's a collaborative process. I can't say that on the traditional design bid build. So you really, if you hire the right team, the process will go well.